The courtroom was suffocating. My father's eyes burned into me from across the room, cold and calculating like they'd always been. He mouthed the words slowly, deliberately. Shut up. Don't say a word. My hands trembled against the wooden bench. For 23 years, I had obeyed that command. For 23 years, I had carried his secret like a stone in my chest. But when Detective Morrison stood up, his weathered face grim with determination, and opened that manila file with steady hands, I knew everything was about to change forever. Your Honor! His voice cut through the suffocating silence. Everyone in this courtroom needs to hear what really happened the night Sarah Chin disappeared. The truth that would destroy my world was finally coming to light. Let me take you back to where it all began, because understanding the story means understanding the man who raised me and the monster he truly was. Growing up, my father was untouchable. Richard Chun, respected businessman, pillar of our small Oregon community, the man everyone looked up to. He owned 3 successful restaurants, donated to every charity, and never missed a church service. When people saw us together, they'd say, "You're so lucky to have such a wonderful father, Emma." If they only knew what happened behind closed doors. The first time I saw him truly angry, I was 8 years old. My mother had burned dinner, just slightly over-crisped the edges of his favorite salmon. His voice didn't raise, but something shifted in the air. Something dangerous. "Sarah," he said quietly, "clean this up. We'll order pizza." But later that night, I heard the sounds from their bedroom. The muffled crying, the sharp whisper, "Don't you ever embarrass me like that again." My mother was gone 3 days later. She needed some time away, he told everyone who asked. Work stress. You know how it is. He was so convincing, so calm, so reasonable. Even I almost believed him. But I knew better. I had seen the suitcase in the trunk of his car, the one that came back empty. For 15 years, I lived with that knowledge. Every time someone asked about Mom, Dad would put his hand on my shoulder, squeeze just a little too tight, and say, "Emma knows her mother chose to leave us. Don't you, sweetheart?" And I would nod, because that's what good daughters do. They protect their father's secrets. The case reopened because of a construction project. They were building a new shopping center where the old Miller farm used to be, about 40 minutes outside town. When the bulldozers broke ground, they found something the builders weren't expecting. Human remains. Female. Buried for approximately 15 years. The medical examiner couldn't identify her immediately, no dental records on file locally. But Detective Morrison, who had just transferred from Portland PD, decided to run the DNA through the national database. Sarah Chen, missing person case from 2009. Last seen at her home on Maple Street. My mother. I remember the morning Detective Morrison showed up at Dad's restaurant. I was there doing inventory, something I'd done every Tuesday for the past 5 years. Dad was in his element. Charming, helpful, concerned. Of course I remember filing the missing person report, Dad said, his voice heavy with old grief. Losing Sarah nearly destroyed me. Emma and we've never been the same. Morrison nodded, taking notes. I know this is difficult, Mr. Chun, but we need to ask, did your wife have any enemies? Anyone who might have wanted to hurt her? Dad's laugh was bitter, perfectly performed. Detective, my wife was the kindest woman you'd ever meet. Everyone loved her. That's what made her disappearance so inexplicable. But I caught it. The tiny tell Dad didn't know he had. His left eye twitched, just slightly when he lied. It had taken me years to notice it, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Morrison must have caught it too, because his questions became sharper. More specific. Where were you the night she disappeared, Mr. Chun? Home with Emma. We waited up until nearly midnight, hoping she'd come back from her sister's house. Another twitch. And Emma can confirm this. Dad's hand found my shoulder. That familiar pressure. That silent warning. Of course she can. Can't you, sweetheart? I should have spoken up right then. I should have told Morrison about the bloody clothes I saw Dad burning in the backyard fire pit. About the missing carpet from their bedroom that was suddenly being cleaned. About the way Dad had spent 3 days meticulously cleaning his car with bleach. Instead, I nodded. Yes, we were together all night. Morrison's eyes met mine for just a moment. Something in his expression told me he knew I was lying. The investigation consumed the next 6 months of our lives. Dad hired the best lawyer money could buy, Marcus Webb, who specialized in high-profile criminal defense. Just a precaution, Dad assured everyone. The police need to follow every lead, even if it means looking at the victim's family. But I could see the cracks starting to show. Dad's restaurant empire began to suffer as rumors spread through town. Longtime customers stopped coming. Staff quit without explanation. The cheerful mask he'd worn for decades was slipping, revealing something much darker underneath. Late at night, I'd hear him on phone calls, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. No, you don't understand. There's no evidence because there's nothing to find. What do you mean they're expanding the search area? They can't possibly. No, absolutely not. Emma knows better than to. She understands family loyalty. That's when I realized he wasn't just worried about being caught. He was terrified of me. The man who had controlled my entire life was afraid of what I might say. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. Morrison had been digging into Dad's background, following a hunch about inconsistencies in his story. What he found changed everything. Emma, Morrison said when he called me at work, I need you to meet me. Somewhere your father won't see us. We met at the old diner on the highway, the one truckers used but locals avoided. Morrison looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. I'm going to tell you something, he said, sliding a photograph across the table, and I need you to promise me you'll hear me out before you react. The photograph showed a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, Asian features, long black hair, kind eyes. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Who is this? Her name was Lisa Park. She disappeared from Seattle in 1995, 3 years before your parents got married. My blood went cold. I don't understand. Morrison pulled out another photograph. This one showed Dad, but he looked different. Younger, yes, but also wrong somehow. His smile was too wide, his eyes too bright. Your father lived in Seattle from 1994 to 1996. He went by the name Robert Park then. He was married to Lisa. The diner seemed to spin around me. That's impossible. My parents met in college. Emma. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. Your father has been married 4 times. Lisa Park was the first wife we know about. Then Jennifer Walsh in Spokane. She disappeared in 1998, 6 months after their wedding. Then your mother. And now. He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Dad was engaged to Margaret Fleming, the sweet widow who owned the flower shop downtown. He's a serial killer, I whispered. Morrison nodded. We believe so. The problem is proving it. These cases are spread across 3 states and 25 years. The evidence is scattered, incomplete. Bodies were never found until now. But you found my mother. We did. And the autopsy showed she died from blunt force trauma to the head. But even with that, we need more. We need witness testimony. We need someone who was there. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. We need you, Emma. The trial began on a gray October morning. Dad sat at the defense table in his best suit, looking every inch the respectable businessman wrongly accused. His lawyer, Webb, had done an excellent job painting the prosecution's case as circumstantial at best. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Webb had argued in his opening statement, the prosecution wants you to believe that Richard Chun, a man with no criminal record, a pillar of his community, suddenly became a cold-blooded killer. Based on what? Suspicious timing. Coincidence. The desperate need to blame someone for a terrible tragedy. But I knew Morrison had been working tirelessly behind the scenes. He connected with detectives in Seattle and Spokane, building a pattern of evidence that even Webb's smooth talking couldn't dismiss. Still, as the days passed, I could see doubt creeping into the jurors' faces. The evidence was strong but not overwhelming. Dad's performance on the stand had been masterful, grief-stricken widower, devoted father, successful businessman brought low by false accusations. That's when Dad made his mistake. During a recess, he approached me in the hallway outside the courtroom. His lawyer was busy with reporters, and for a moment, we were alone. Emma, he said, his voice carrying that old familiar authority. This has gone far enough. When they call you to testify tomorrow, you're going to tell them the truth, that I was home with you that night, that we waited up for your mother together, that I would never hurt the woman I loved. I looked into his eyes and saw the same cold calculation that had terrified me as a child. And if I don't, his smile was thin and dangerous. Then you'll discover what happened to all the others who crossed me. Do you understand, daughter? I understood perfectly. For the first time in my life, I understood exactly who my father really was. The next morning, I sat in the witness box with trembling hands. The prosecutor, District Attorney Rachel Martinez, approached slowly. Emma, can you tell us about the night your mother disappeared? I looked across the courtroom. Dad's eyes were locked on mine, cold and threatening. He mouthed the words I'd heard my entire life. Shut up. Don't say a word. For a moment, I wavered. The terrified 8-year-old in me wanted to obey, wanted to protect the monster who had raised me. But then Detective Morrison stood up. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply opened his file folder and held up 3 photographs. Lisa Park, Jennifer Walsh, my mother. 3 women who had trusted my father. 3 women who had died because no one was brave enough to speak the truth. Emma! D.A. Martinez prompted gently. What happened that night? I took a deep breath and began to speak. My father killed my mother on March 15th, 2009. I saw him carry her body to his car wrapped in the bedroom carpet. I watched him burn his bloody clothes in our backyard fire pit. And when the police came asking questions, he told me that if I ever told anyone what I saw, I would end up just like her. The courtroom exploded. Dad's lawyer was on his feet, shouting objections. Dad himself looked like he'd been struck by lightning, his carefully constructed mask finally shattered. But I wasn't finished. He told me yesterday that if I testified against him, I would discover what happened to all the others who crossed him. He threatened to kill me, just like he killed Lisa Park and Jennifer Walsh, and God knows how many other women whose only crime was trusting him. When the judge finally restored order, Morrison was smiling. The detective who had refused to let these cases go cold, who had spent months building an ironclad case against a master manipulator. The prosecution calls Detective James Morrison to present additional evidence. Morrison approached the witness stand with a thick folder. Your Honor, after Miss Chen's testimony this morning, I was authorized to present evidence from related cases in Seattle and Spokane. What followed was 3 hours of methodical destruction. Phone records showing Dad in Seattle when Lisa Park disappeared. Financial records proving he'd lived under the assumed name Robert Park. Testimony from Jennifer Walsh's sister, who identified Dad from photographs. DNA evidence from Mom's remains that matched genetic material found under Lisa Park's fingernails preserved in an evidence locker for 29 years. The web of lies and false identities unraveled completely. Richard Chun, Robert Park, David Walsh, all the same man. All a carefully constructed facade hiding a monster who had been killing women for decades. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder. Multiple counts of identity fraud. Witness intimidation. When the judge sentenced Dad to life without parole, he looked at me one final time. The cold authority was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before, defeat. After the sentencing, Morrison found me sitting alone in the courthouse parking lot. You did the right thing, he said quietly. I should have done it 15 years ago. You were a child. You were scared. None of this is your fault, Emma. What happens now? Morrison sat down beside me on the bench. Now we keep digging. Your father's been moving around for 30 years, changing names, changing stories. There are probably more victims out there. More families who deserve answers. And Margaret Fleming? Safe. We contacted her the day after your testimony. She's staying with her daughter in California while we sort through everything. I nodded, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, relief. The monster was caged. The secrets were exposed. The women he'd killed finally had justice. 6 months later, Morrison called with news I'd been hoping for and dreading in equal measure. We found 2 more, he said. Karen Martinez in Phoenix disappeared 1993, and Amanda Foster in Denver, 1991. Both married to men matching your father's description, both missing after suspicious circumstances. 5 women. Maybe more they'd never find. How many others might there be? We may never know, Morrison admitted. But Emma, because you found the courage to speak up, we were able to stop him. Margaret Fleming is alive because of you. Any woman who might have been next. She's alive because of you. Today, I work with the DA's office, helping other witnesses find the strength to speak their truth. I've learned that monsters hide in plain sight, behind charming smiles and respectable facades. But I've also learned that truth, once spoken, has a power that no amount of manipulation can overcome. My father will die in prison. The man who controlled me through fear, who silenced me with threats, who built his life on the graves of innocent women, he has no power over me anymore. Sometimes late at night, I still hear his voice. Shut up. Don't say a word. But now I know better. Now I know that speaking up, telling the truth, no matter how terrifying, is the only way to stop monsters from winning. The silence that protects predators dies the moment survivors find their voice. And I finally found mine. But the story doesn't end there. Because 3 weeks after Dad's conviction, I received a package at my apartment with no return address. Inside was a wooden jewelry box, antique, delicate, the kind you might find at an estate sale. My hands shook as I opened it, because somehow I knew this wasn't random. Tucked inside the red velvet lining were 5 small items: a silver locket, a class ring from Denver High School 1991, a wedding band engraved with Forever Yours RP, a small gold cross, and a driver's license. The license belonged to Patricia Williams, expired 1989. There was also a note, written in Dad's careful handwriting. Emma, you think you know the whole truth, but you barely scratched the surface. I've been collecting these memories for 35 years. Check Unit 247 at Westside Storage. The key is taped under your mother's headstone. Tell Detective Morrison he was right to keep digging. There are so many more stories to tell. Your father. Morrison met me at the cemetery that evening. Mom's headstone was simple granite with her name and dates. Dates we now knew were accurate thanks to the autopsy. With shaking fingers, I felt underneath the base until I found the small silver key taped to the back. He's playing games, Morrison warned as we drove to the storage facility. Serial killers love to maintain control even from prison. He wants you to see this because he thinks it will break you. Then why are we going? Because those families deserve to know what happened to their daughters, their sisters, their mothers. Unit 247 was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. When Morrison raised the metal door, the smell hit us first. Old cardboard and something else, something that made my stomach turn. Inside were dozens of boxes, each labeled with a year and a woman's name. Patricia Williams, 1989. Sandra Kim, 1992. Maria Santos, 1996. Linda Rodriguez, 2001. The boxes went back to 1987 and forward to 2010. 18 boxes, 18 women. Each box contained the same horrifying collection. Jewelry, personal items, photographs, and detailed notes in Dad's handwriting describing how he'd met them, courted them, and ultimately killed them. He'd kept souvenirs like some twisted collector, documenting his crimes with the same methodical precision he'd used to run his restaurants. The most disturbing part wasn't the evidence of murder, it was how normal it all seemed to him. His notes read like business records, clinical and detached. Patricia responded well to compliments about her cooking. Vulnerability, recently divorced, lonely. Timeline, 3 months courtship, 2 weeks marriage. Method, blunt force trauma following argument about money. Disposal, Riverside County landfill. Personal effects retained for memory preservation. Morrison had to step outside twice to compose himself. Even seasoned detectives have limits. Emma, he said when we'd gone through half the boxes. You don't have to do this. We can call in a team. No. I picked up another photograph. A smiling woman with kind eyes, probably someone's daughter, someone's sister. He made sure I was part of the story. He wanted me to find these women. The least I can do is learn their names. We spent 6 hours in that storage unit, cataloging evidence that would reopen 18 cold cases across 7 states. Some of the women had been reported missing. Others, like the elderly widow Patricia Williams, had been assumed to have moved away or died of natural causes. All of them deserved justice. All of them deserved to have their stories told. The revelations from the storage unit made national news. Dad became the subject of true crime documentaries and psychological studies. The FBI created a task force to investigate similar cases, using his methods as a blueprint for identifying other potential serial killers who prey on vulnerable women through false romantic relationships. But for me, the most important outcome was smaller, more personal. Patricia Williams had a daughter named Susan who'd spent 35 years believing her mother had abandoned her. When Morrison called to tell her we'd found evidence of what really happened, Susan cried for 2 hours straight. I always knew she wouldn't just leave, Susan told me when we met for coffee months later. Everyone said I should accept it and move on, but I knew my mom. She wouldn't have left without saying goodbye. That conversation taught me something crucial. The ripple effects of a monster's crimes extend far beyond their immediate victims. Families spend decades carrying guilt, confusion, and pain that isn't theirs to bear. Children grow up believing they weren't worth staying for. Communities lose trust in the very concept of safety. When we expose the truth, even when it's ugly, even when it's terrifying, we don't just deliver justice. We give people permission to stop carrying weight that was never theirs to hold. Today, I run a nonprofit organization called Breaking the Silence. We help family members of cold case victims navigate the legal system and connect with resources for healing. We also work with law enforcement agencies to identify patterns of predatory behavior before they escalate to violence. The most rewarding part of my work is the phone calls from people who've found the courage to speak up about abuse, manipulation, or suspicious circumstances they've witnessed. Every person who refuses to stay silent is a potential life saved. Last month, a woman named Claire called our hotline. Her new boyfriend exhibited concerning patterns: love bombing followed by isolation, suspicious gaps in his personal history, evasiveness about his past relationships. I keep telling myself I'm being paranoid, she said. He's so charming, so attentive. Everyone loves him. That's exactly what makes them dangerous, I told her. Trust your instincts. They're trying to save your life. Claire ended the relationship that week. 2 months later, police arrested her ex-boyfriend for the murder of his previous girlfriend, a case that had been classified as accidental death until Claire's tip prompted them to re-examine the evidence. One phone call, one person willing to speak up, one life saved. That's the power of breaking the silence. My father thought he could control me forever with fear and threats. He believed that keeping me quiet would protect his secrets indefinitely. But silence only protects predators, never their victims. The truth has a voice, and once you learn to use yours, no monster can silence you ever again. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more true crime stories that need to be told. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps these stories reach people who need to hear them.